Now, you have a source for the truth in the news. W. Dean Shook, End Time News. Your connection to the signs of the times.
And welcome to this edition of End Time News. I'm your host, W. Dean Shook, bringing you the news the mainstream media will never report to you. And I am pleased to do that every single time. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I want to start with an ISIS message to the U.S. that says we are in your state and your cities. It's a frightening reality. Americans now live in a country that would be facing a terrorist threat worse than Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State. Intelligence warns the Islamic State may attempt a major terrorist strike in Europe or the United States to assert itself as the true leader of the international jihadist movement. ISIS is using social media to advance its in-your-face propaganda. Recently, a photo was tweeted of a hand holding an ISIS flag right in front of the White House. It was pictured with a handwritten warning attached that read, "A message from ISIS to the U.S. We are in your state, we are in your cities, we are in your streets. You are our goal." Another photo was shown in the same picture. It featured a handwritten note in Arabic held in front of a building with two American flags, and it's unclear where this location was, but translated, the note dated June 20th, 2014, "Soldiers of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria will pass from here soon," followed by a verse from the Quran. Well, I have bad news for ISIS. The tactics that they've used in Syria and Iraq are third world tactics. They won't work here. American citizens are the most well-armed citizens in the world. They may want to rethink that before they come gunning for us on our streets. And here's another. According to the Daily Caller, Alan West declares Obama is an Islamist. Former Florida Representative Alan West declared President Obama an Islamist who is intentionally working against the security of the United States. The former congressman, a retired U.S. Army lieutenant colonel, wrote in the Post published Wednesday, "The only plausible explanation for any action taken by President Obama and his administration is that they're working counter to the security of the United States of America." Among 6 examples he gave to back up his point is Obama's decision to release 5 Taliban in exchange for Sergeant Birdahl in May, providing weapons of support to the Egyptian government led by the Muslim Brotherhood, and negotiating with Hamas. It also writes at length about Obama's secret decision to lift a ban on Libya's attending U.S. flight schools and studying nuclear science, which had been in place since 1983. Can anyone explain what the strategy and objective is in lifting this ban on a nation that is or should be on the terrorist watch list, he said. "Sorry, but I can only explain this one way. Barack Hussein Obama is an Islamist in his foreign policy perspectives and supports their cause. The pivot away from the Middle East seems to be nothing more than an opportunity to enable Islamists and their goals," he continues. "Anyone supporting this Libyan ban being lifted is indeed an enemy of the state." Well, I've got to give Alan West credit. He's not afraid to say his piece. And here's one from LifeSite News, which I thought was kind of interesting, and of course dovetails with our last story. LifeSite News is reporting, is Obama lackluster response on Boko Haram tied to Nigeria's gay marriage ban? Well, how can that be? Well, a U.S. congressman who led a delegation to Nigeria to investigate Boko Haram in June has accused the Obama administration of withholding key information that could help the Nigerian military fight this Islamic group, which has all but taken over the northern part of the country. Representative Steve Stockman from Texas suggests a key reason is the administration's opposition to Nigeria's social policy. And he explains, in the first 6 months of this year alone, Boko Haram has killed more than 2,000 civilians, and in April, the group kidnapped hundreds of young girls from a school in Chibok with the intention of selling them as sex slaves. Most of the girls remain missing. We have information that would help the Nigerian military take back their country and get back those girls. Stockman told WorldNet Daily earlier this month the mistake on our side the United States side, is that we have laws preventing us from sharing that information with the Nigerian military. One of those reasons is that we don't like some of the social policies of the Nigerian government. An unnamed source told WorldNet Daily that a specific policy in question was Nigeria's ban on same-sex marriage, which makes it a crime to enter into any sort of formalized homosexual union or to in any way assist with one. We have laws preventing us from sharing that information with the Nigerian military. One of the reasons is that we don't like some of the social policies of the Nigerian government, is what they said. It's unclear to which law Stockman was specifically referring, but Amnesty International Government Relations Manager told ABC News in May the Leahy Law, in particular, has been a major source of frustration for the Nigerians who wanted U.S. assistance. Now, the Leahy Law bars the U.S. Department of State and Department of Defense from providing assistance to foreign military units if there's credible evidence that they have committed gross human rights violation, defined as murder of civilians, torture, kidnapping, and/or rape. It also leaves room for the U.S. government to give or withhold aid on a case-by-case basis for lesser human rights offenses. The law that was passed in 1997 and named for its sponsor, Senator Patrick Leahy from Vermont, does not explicitly take into account a nation's treatment of homosexuals, but Senator Leahy vowed in January to push for a companion law banning the aid to foreign countries that criminalize homosexual behavior. Now, asked directly by LifeSite whether Nigeria's stance on homosexuality had impacted U.S. response in the region, a State Department spokesman who insisted on anonymity was evasive. Here's what he said. Over the last few months, the U.S. has continued to support our Nigerian partners as they have led efforts to combat Boko Haram and return the Chibok girls. The spokesman told LifeSite News by email, "We have provided intelligence support, personnel, other tactical and material supports, and we remain committed to helping Nigeria bring back the girls and helping the region to establish a durable and integrated approach to combating the regional threat from Boko Haram." But the spokesman added, "Our stance on LGBT rights is also clear. LGBT rights are human rights. In Nigeria, we've spoken out against the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act. This is a law that not only criminalizes same-sex marriage, but also restricts freedom of association, expression, and assembly for all Nigerians. We continue to engage extensively in the highest level of government with the police and the regional and local officials to press the message of nonviolence and non-discrimination," the spokesman continued. "We are also providing support to civil society. We're monitoring closely the implementation of SSMP and its impact on the LGBT persons and their allies. We'll take appropriate actions as needed." Pressed further on whether the Leahy Law might be used to justify withholding information from Nigerian officials, the State Department spokesman said, "The Leahy Law prevents the U.S. from providing assistance using funding authorized by the Foreign Assistance Act to security forces units or other individuals we have credible information that they have committed a gross violation of human rights. Gross violations are defined in statute and include torture and other forms of cruel and unusual punishment, killings, forced disappearances, rapes, prolonged arbitrary detention. We may or may not withhold assistance to units that have been involved in other forms of misconduct or have been implemented in other forms of human rights violations, depending on the facts from other policies or legal reasons," the spokesman added. "We've been very open about our concerns about Nigeria's human rights record. Promoting respect for human rights is a key aspect of the assistance we provide. In this instance, and in all of its counterterrorism operations, we call on Nigeria to protect civilian, respect human rights, address impunity, and address the underlying causes of the conflict." So you decide what you get from that story. Is our government pushing their values on other governments and withholding assistance because of that? And the war continues. There is a war on religious liberty. Please listen to this clip and the following story.
You know, the attacks on Christian values and the attacks on the culture have become so significant that I pretty much exclusively cover those stories now at Fox News. And through my coverage and through my investigative reporting, I've discovered that it's not just a war on religious liberty, but this is in fact a war that is specifically targeting people of the Christian faith. Some of the most egregious attacks on religious liberty have actually come from the United States military under the Obama administration. We've had the Obama administration put liberal lawyers in the Pentagon, and they've been handing down edicts. For example, I tell the story in the book about a diversity training session that soldiers had to go through. They were told that Roman Catholics and evangelical Christians were examples of religious extremism, right up there with Hamas and Al-Qaeda. I tell stories in the book about how officers have been told to hide their faith in God. They've been told to remove Bibles and other religious icons from their desks. And in Afghanistan, I tell stories about how chapels have been cleansed of any Christian markings, whether it be a cross or some sort of an altar or a statue of Jesus. These are just some of the examples of religious extremism occurring in the military. But within the general population, I've discovered that our public schools have become basically indoctrination centers. I tell the story in the book about how one group of school children actually went to a VA hospital to sing Christmas carols, and they were met at the door by a government officer who told them that they would not be able to sing songs about Jesus, but instead handed the children a list of government-approved Christmas songs. These are some of the stories that I tell in God Bless America. The president has really pushed forward a secular humanist agenda during his administration, and it's really puzzling. This man professes to be a follower of Jesus Christ, and yet he allows his administration to attack his own faith. It just doesn't make sense. But at the same time, we have public schools that are controlled by liberals, and especially in the university sector, where it's just a battleground every day for young people of the Christian faith. And unfortunately, these people are in places of influence and power, and as a result of that, we are seeing a significant culture decline, and it's happening in a very short amount of time.
This is a WND exclusive. I'm from the government, and I'm here to rewrite your sermons. Imagine uttering the words pro-life in your church and finding yourself targeted by an investigation from the feared and reviled Internal Revenue Service. An expert on the First Amendment conflict between pastors and the federal agencies, which say it's investigating speech delivered from pulpits, confirms that that's possible. Daniel Bloomberg, legal consultant for the Beckett Fund, told WND a recent case brought by the Freedom from Religion Foundation against the IRS that protects the prospect of investigations of pastoral speech. The demand that the IRS investigate sermons focusing on certain politically charged code words. But the case suddenly was dismissed at the request of FFRF, which said it was satisfied because the IRS agreed to adopt standards for determining whether churches and religious organizations are complying with restrictions on political activities. The case was dismissed without prejudice, so FFRF could file another lawsuit if it believes the IRS is not following through with its promise. Bloomberg said the case was brought by the foundation to force the IRS to attend church services and launch investigations. But the abrupt closure left many questions unanswered, he said. That's part of the problem. The way the case was closed out, it looks like the FFRF collaborated with the IRS, getting their own case dismissed. He said still in question is what the IRS will allow ministers to say and in what context. There are hints from the past. In 1993, the IRS issued guidelines for its agents stipulating that a preacher can say during an election campaign, talking about a pro-life cause, the importance of voting pro-life, those can be code words the IRS can use to come after the church, Bloomberg said. It's intimidating. What is the speech police? He continued, it's a chill on speech. Even if you never lose your tax-exempt status, never personally face an excise tax, it's the specter of being investigated. The bottom line, he said, is the IRS uses the fear of government intervention to convince church leaders to self-censor. This should confirm for every American that believe we do not want to empower the government on what is said during religious services. He said we need to be protecting the speech of religious leaders to religious congregations. And I want to report on the illegal immigration. Regardless of why illegal aliens enter the U.S. from Latin America, the fact remains that their presence in large numbers could make it easier to integrate the U.S. with Mexico. And once integration happens, it would become even easier for Mexicans to migrate to the United States with illegal immigration and open border concepts, so illegal immigration and North American Union would reinforce each other. He said in an age of mass immigration and global economy, a national sovereignty is hard to continue. The pressures for the United States is not to be a sovereign nation in 20 or 50-year period of time. It's almost overwhelming. He said it doesn't, however, expect public plans for any union to be discussed at any time soon. With the open borders and the invasion going on from Central America, I think Americans are again seeing that this possibility of a North American Union plan is still in place, just today in a stealth methodology. The official Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America, which some called a prelude to the NAU, has been officially inactive since 2009. Or has it? And I'd like to end this update with a story about David Gregory and Meet the Press. According to page 6, Gregory got a $4 million bonus to leave NBC quietly. Ousted Meet the Press anchor David Gregory was paid $4 million to leave NBC and signed a contract not to speak out against the network. This is what sources told page 6. Gregory, who's 43, who moderated the show for 6 years, was unceremoniously dumped from the political program on Thursday after dismal rating and months of speculation about his departure. He has been replaced by NBC White House correspondent Chuck Todd. A source said Gregory's contract ended in the next year, so NBC had to pay him for the rest of his term, plus an extra fee to ensure his silence. In return, he was asked to sign a non-disparagement clause, which explains, despite the drama behind the scenes, his message on Twitter to announce his departure reads, "I leave NBC as I came, humbled and grateful. I love journalism, and serving as moderator of Meet the Press was the highest honor there is. I have great respect for my colleagues at NBC News and wish them all well. To the viewers, I say thank you." But quietly, sources say Gregory is angry and humiliated at the way he was treated by NBC suits, who let him twist in the wind through much painful speculation before finally pulling the plug. Now, page 6 reported that Gregory confronted NBC brass last week after continuous rumors that he would be replaced by Todd. NBC has tapped Andrea Mitchell to host this week's show, denying Gregory a chance to say farewell or anything else on air. Todd takes over September 7th. NBC declined to comment. Gregory's future may be at CNN. Page 6 has reported that the network was developing a pilot for him, while others speculate he could be on crossfire with Newt Gingrich, who could actually use an authoritative moderator.
You know, seems these days that not a single one of us steps on a train, boards an airplane, attends a concert or a sporting event and doesn't have at least a fleeting concern that terror could strike. The reality of the post-9/11 world is that we're at war and we are a target. We all live with some level of uncertainty and fear. It's easy to lose sight of an issue that defines our generation, the need to stop terrorism in our time. Our president apologizes for America, and he's made it clear that the era of American exceptionalism is over. He campaigned on closing Guantanamo and trying terrorists in civilian court. On his second day in office, he stopped enhanced interrogation and he closed down the black sites. You know, where we got the intel that ultimately led us to bin Laden? He has all but abandoned Israel despite the fact that Iran is the world's leading sponsor of terror, that openly calls for the annihilation of Israel. All while Iran develops a nuclear bomb that they recently announced could be delivered to U.S. targets via missiles developed during Obama's presidency, while he does nothing but talk. The question for every American is simply, are we safer? AreWeSafer.com provides you with the facts and the potential consequences of these failed policies so that you can make informed decisions. I mean, let's face it. If things don't change, everything will change. And we all hope that day never comes.
And don't forget, this program stays alive by you visiting our sponsors. GoDaddy.com at the banner at the bottom of our homepage at wdeanshook.com. Please visit our sponsors. You can get your own domain name for as little as $4.99 a year. Please help support this program. Visit our sponsors. And as usual, when the smoke clears and the dust settles, I'll see you on our next program. God bless.
You can get these full stories and more at wdeanshook.com. That's wdeanshook.com.